October is when gardeners finally get to relax. Once the harvest is in, can you breathe a sigh of relief and forget about your garden beds until spring? Think again, because right now, in October, you could be making mistakes that will subtly, yet surely, kill your next year's harvest. Today, we're going to uncover 10 of these silent killers of your future garden. And I promise you, some of them will genuinely surprise you. October, in the garden, isn't the grand finale. It's more like laying the groundwork for next year. As nature prepares for its winter slumber, many pests and diseases are also seeking cosy spots to overwinter. What you do this month will determine whether your plot becomes their comfortable winter resort or an insurmountable barrier. Let's dive in and see where the main dangers truly lie. So let's kick things off with the most common and treacherous mistake. It's the trap I call leaving everything as is. Picture this scenario. The harvest is in, your back is aching from the hard work, and you're looking out at your garden. It's strewn with fallen leaves, dried up tomato vines, cucumber foliage, and zucchini stalks. And the first thought that pops into your head is, so what? It's just nature. It's organic matter. It'll just break down over winter and enrich the soil. Sounds perfectly reasonable, doesn't it? But in reality, at this very moment, you're not helping nature. You're building a 5-star hotel for all the main enemies of your next harvest. Think about it. Where do you think the blight spores from those blackened tomato vines go? Exactly. They'll cozy up right there for the winter. And what about powdery mildew from your zucchini or cucumber leaves? It's not going anywhere. This plant debris will happily host aphid eggs, Colorado potato beetle larvae, spider mites, and even slugs throughout the cold months. You're literally creating the perfect winter resort for them. And what happens come spring? The moment the ground warms up with the first gentle sun, this entire army of pests and diseases will awaken. Hungry, well-rested, and right in the thick of it, smack dab in your vegetable beds. They'll be waiting for your tender young seedlings like a gourmet feast. So remember this, leaving diseased plant matter and piles of leaves in your garden beds isn't just lazy gardening. It's setting a ticking time bomb for next year's yield. Another common oversight, and a major one, concerns nourishing your soil. The harvest is in, the beds are empty, and a familiar thought settles in many gardeners' minds. Why bother fertilizing now? The plants are dormant. They don't need anything. Following this logic, the soil is left hungry until spring. But this is a fundamentally flawed approach that will significantly undermine your future harvest. The truth is, in autumn, we're not so much feeding the plants themselves as we are feeding the countless inhabitants of your soil. Your earth isn't just dirt. It's a vibrant, living world teeming with billions of beneficial bacteria, microorganisms, and of course, earthworms. These are your tireless allies, your main agronomists. When you introduce organic matter in the fall, whether it's compost, well-rotted manure, or simply chopped up cover crops, you're giving this subterranean army a crucial job to do. They have the entire winter to slowly but steadily break down this organic material. They transform it into humus, into those vital, easily accessible nutrients that your plants will so desperately need come springtime. By the time your garden awakens, the soil will already be charged, brimming with life, and primed to deliver its full power to your young sprouts. If you postpone feeding until spring, your plants will be forced to wait for those amendments to start working. Autumn feeding is a strategic long-term investment in your soil's health and fertility. Now let's talk about pruning, where another common mistake often occurs. Once the leaves have fallen in October, it's tempting to grab your pruners and tidy things up. You might want to cut back all the dry, weak or straggly branches. It feels like you're helping the plant by clearing away unnecessary dead weight before winter. However, this drive for perfect order can lead to a fatal error, depriving yourself of flowers for the entire next season. The crucial thing to understand is that many ornamental shrubs bloom on old wood, meaning on growth from the previous year. What does this mean? It means the flower buds, which will produce beautiful blossoms in the spring or early summer, have already formed on the stems that grew this season. And if you thoughtlessly cut these back in the fall, you're literally destroying all your future flowers with your own hands. A prime example is the big leaf hydrangea. If you prune its stems in the fall, you are guaranteed to miss out on its famous show-stopping blooms next year. The same applies to plants like forsythia, many varieties of spirea, weigela, and deutzia. These plants should be pruned strictly after they finish flowering, typically in summer. For these plants, full pruning isn't a form of care. It's more like vandalism. Therefore, before you reach for your pruning shears, double-check whether your particular shrub blooms on old or new wood. Otherwise, instead of a vibrant, colourful garden, you'll be left with nothing but green foliage. Now let's talk about a foe that many gardeners simply write off in October: weeds. What's the big deal, you might think? Frosts are coming soon, and all those pesky weeds like lambsquarters, quackgrass and chickweed will simply freeze and die off. I can just relax and put off weeding until spring. Makes sense, right? Unfortunately, no. This is another serious mistake that will come back to bite you in April, causing you a major headache. The truth is, you're only seeing the surface. The real problem isn't the visible parts, but what's beneath, specifically the seeds. By October, most annual weeds have already completed their primary mission. They've dropped thousands, even tens of thousands of seeds. These seeds are like tiny survival capsules. They're impervious to frost and ice. They'll lie dormant in the soil all winter. And come spring, as soon as the ground warms up, they'll emerge in a thick, dense carpet, and they'll sprout much earlier than your cultivated crops. They'll start stealing precious moisture and nutrients from your future carrots and beets even before you've had a chance to plant anything. Autumn weeding isn't about fighting dying plants. It's about eradicating next year's weed seed bank. Spending just an hour now in October will save you dozens of hours next spring. Every weed you pull up by the root now means hundreds, even thousands, fewer weeds in the coming season. Let's talk about those indispensable companions in your garden, your tools. Too often, after a long season, many gardeners neglect their spades, hoes, pruners, and rakes. They're simply tossed into the shed or under a lean-to, caked with dirt and plant debris still clinging to them. It seems like a small oversight. I'll clean them in the spring, you might think, but this seemingly minor neglect is actually a ticking time bomb, threatening both your tools and your precious plants. First, that lingering dirt and moisture create the perfect breeding ground for rust and corrosion. Throughout a long damp winter, the soil left on your tools will hold moisture against the metal. By spring, you might find ugly patches of rust blooming on your favourite spade or pruners. Rust doesn't just look bad, it actively corrodes the metal, making blades dull, brittle, and weak. Using rusty tools becomes a chore. They're heavy, ineffective, and can even be dangerous. But there's a second, even more insidious threat. The soil and plant debris left on your tools can harbour fungal disease spores. Think about blights, powdery mildew, or rust itself. Come spring, you'll pick up that seemingly harmless pruner, start trimming a healthy tree or rose bush, and unknowingly, you'll transfer those diseases directly to your plants. Essentially, your tool becomes a vector, injecting infection right into your garden. So, a simple routine, clean, dry, disinfect cutting blades, and then oil them, isn't just a fussy extra step. It's an essential safeguard for your garden's health and ensures your tools will serve you well for many seasons to come. Now let's turn our attention to that beautiful green carpet on your property, your lawn if you're lucky enough to have one. By October, grass growth slows significantly, and it might seem like your lawn no longer needs any attention until spring. However, this is precisely where many homeowners make a crucial mistake, leaving their lawn to winter under a thick blanket of fallen leaves. While it might look natural, mimicking a forest floor, a lawn is not a forest, and this kind of care can actually be detrimental, even deadly. Imagine the scenario. A thick, dense layer of wet leaves completely smothers your grass, cutting off essential air and light. Trapped underneath this heavy, suffocating blanket, your lawn starts to literally stew. This creates an ideal, warm and damp environment, a perfect breeding ground for mould and fungal diseases, most notably snow mould. This fungus appears as unsightly grey or pink patches, resembling cobwebs that will leave ugly bare spots on your lawn once the snow melts in spring. The matted leaves form a dense, impenetrable crust that effectively chokes your grass. Ultimately, by spring, you won't be greeted by a lush, emerald carpet, but rather a patchy, weakened expanse dotted with areas of dead, matted grass. Restoring such a damaged lawn will be a long and challenging process. So, make that one last autumn effort. Grab your rake and thoroughly clear all fallen leaves from your lawn. This simple act will allow your grass to breathe and help it successfully survive the winter. The seventh common mistake revolves around planting, as October can seem like a prime time for many garden plants. It's tempting to get garlic, onion sets, or even an avenue of tulip and daffodil bulbs into the ground before winter. But here's the trap: choosing the wrong time. Many gardeners rush the process, planting bulbs in early October when the weather is often still warm, characteristic of a lingering autumn. It seems logical, giving them more time to establish roots. However, this can actually lead to the demise of your entire planting. The problem with planting too early, especially into warm soil, is that the bulbs don't just root. They actively begin to grow. They send up green shoots, delicate sprouts pushing their way to the surface. And what happens then? The first serious frost, which could hit as early as November, will simply obliterate this tender new growth. The plant expends all its energy on this premature growth, leaving it with nothing left to survive the actual winter. In spring, it will either fail to emerge at all, or it will be very weak, resulting in a poor harvest or sparse blooms. The ideal time for late fall or pre-winter planting is when soil temperatures consistently drop to around +5 to +7 degrees Celsius, 41-45 Fahrenheit. This typically occurs in late October or even early November. The key guideline is to ensure there are still 2 to 3 weeks before sustained hard freezes set in. This gives the bulbs just enough time to establish a good root system without actually sprouting. So, when it comes to this task, haste is definitely your worst enemy. A common mistake many gardeners make is underestimating the harshness of winter for their young plants. It's easy to assume that if a new apple sapling or a rose bush has made it through the summer, it's strong enough to survive the cold season on its own. Consequently, these vulnerable plants are often left without any protection, exposed to biting frosts, fierce winds, and hungry wildlife. This oversight is a serious miscalculation that could cost you your entire young garden. Winter presents several severe challenges. Firstly, pests. Hungry mice and rabbits, with little other food available, will often target the tender, juicy bark of young trees and shrubs as a winter delicacy. In just one night, they can completely girdle a trunk, effectively cutting off the tree's nutrient supply and leading to its inevitable death. Therefore, protecting trunks with special netting, or even old tights, isn't an optional step. It's a crucial necessity. Secondly, the strong sun in late winter and early spring, particularly February and March. During the day, this bright sun can intensely heat dark bark, only for temperatures to plummet drastically at night. This rapid fluctuation causes cracks, known as frost cracks, to form in the bark, creating open entry points for diseases and infections. Whitewashing tree trunks isn't just for aesthetics. It acts like sunscreen, reflecting the sun's rays and protecting the tree from damaging burns. Similarly, delicate roses and other tender shrubs require proper winter coverings to prevent their precious buds from freezing. To leave a young plant exposed to winter without protection is akin to sending a child out into the bitter cold without a hat and mittens. Another common mistake, even for experienced gardeners, is getting their watering wrong in October. There are two extremes to avoid, both of which can be detrimental. The first is to stop watering altogether, assuming fall rains will be sufficient. The second is to continue watering beds with the same frequency as in summer, never allowing the soil to dry completely. The key, as always, lies in moderation, specifically a technique called deep autumn watering. What exactly is deep autumn watering? Think of your trees and shrubs. In autumn, they're gearing up for a long, dry winter. Winter frost can dry out the soil just as effectively as summer heat, and harsh winds can desiccate branches. If roots go into winter in dry soil, plants will suffer from severe dehydration. This severely weakens them, potentially leading to winter kill or frost damage on branches and a sluggish start come spring. That's why in late October, after the leaves have fallen, but before consistent, hard freezes set in, it's crucial to provide a thorough, deep watering. The goal is to thoroughly saturate the soil around the root zone, aiming for a depth of up to 1.5 meters, or about 5 feet. This deeply absorbed water creates a vital moisture reservoir that will nourish roots throughout the entire winter. This significantly boosts their winter hardiness, helping them better withstand the stresses of cold. But moderation is key. This deep watering is a one-time event, but it needs to be extremely generous. However, constantly flooding your beds and creating waterlogged conditions is equally detrimental, as it can lead to root rot. The 10th and final mistake, often made with the best intentions in pursuit of pristine order, is the desire to leave the soil perfectly clean, bare, and thoroughly dug over for winter. It might seem like the pinnacle of gardening wisdom. Weeds eliminated, pest larvae exposed to the frost, the earth loose and beautiful. But in reality, by leaving the soil in such a vulnerable state, we cause it serious harm. Nature abhors a vacuum, especially bare earth. Unprotected soil in winter is subjected to several destructive factors. First, it freezes much deeper. The icy crust shatters the soil structure, turning fertile aggregates into dust. Second, winter winds blow away the top, most fertile layer, leading to erosion. Third, bare ground is a death sentence for countless beneficial soil microorganisms and earthworms, which simply freeze to death without a protective blanket. So what should you do? Instead of leaving the ground bare, it needs to be covered. This process is called mulching. You can use mowed grass, straw, healthy fallen leaves, or cover crops sown in the autumn. Mulch acts like a warm blanket. It protects the soil from freezing and wind erosion, preserves its structure and moisture, and in spring, as it decomposes, it becomes an excellent organic fertilizer. So, bare soil in winter isn't a sign of order. It's a sign of stress for your garden. Let's dig a little deeper into another compost-related topic. After tidying up their garden beds, many gardeners toss all collected plant waste, leaves, stems, and other debris, straight into the compost pile. It's a wonderful idea, turning organic waste into valuable fertilizer. But there's a crucial mistake many make if they do this without thinking. Not all plant material is fit to become future nourishment for your garden beds. Imagine your tomatoes suffered from late blight this year, your cucumbers were covered in powdery mildew, and your apple tree leaves were affected by scab. If you toss all these diseased plant remains into your compost, you won't kill the pathogens. Quite the opposite. You'll create ideal conditions for them to survive and thrive. Fungal spores, for example, will happily overwinter in the warm environment of a compost pile. And what happens next spring, or even a year from now, when you take this finished compost, looking perfectly healthy and rich, and spread it across your garden beds? You will, with your own hands, evenly spread that infection throughout your entire garden. You'll contaminate healthy soil and condemn your future crops to the very same diseases. So remember this golden rule. Only healthy plant material should ever go into your compost. All diseased plant parts, spotted leaves, and infected fruits must be ruthlessly burned or disposed of far away from your property. Otherwise, your compost pile will transform from a source of fertility into an infectious bomb. What about your trusty greenhouse? Many gardeners make the mistake of simply clearing out the last harvest, pulling up the old plants, and locking the door until spring. You might think everything's safe inside, and that winter's cold will take care of any lingering issues. In reality, you're not just leaving behind an empty structure, you're creating a perfect winter haven, an incubator, if you will, for pests and diseases. The unique microclimate of a greenhouse is a haven for many common garden problems. Hidden in the frame's crevices, nestled in the top layer of soil, clinging to unremoved plant ties, and tucked away in plant debris, the most resilient and troublesome pests are perfectly set up to overwinter. Chief among these is the spider mite, which absolutely thrives in warm, dry conditions. You might also find whitefly pupae and fungal disease spores, like those causing cladosporiosis, lurking here. Come spring, as soon as the sun's warmth returns, this entire army will awaken, ready to multiply in ideal conditions. Your young, tender seedlings will become their first and most welcome feast. To prevent this scenario, a thorough autumn cleanup of your greenhouse isn't just recommended, it's essential. You need to remove all plant debris, take down and disinfect any plant ties, thoroughly wash down the polycarbonate or glass surfaces, and most importantly, perform a thorough disinfection. Consider using a sulfur fumigator or treating all surfaces and the soil with fungicide solutions. Only then will your greenhouse truly be clean and safe, ready to welcome spring. Many gardeners, especially beginners, often overlook an age-old practice, whitewashing tree trunks. It's frequently dismissed as purely decorative, just to make the garden look neat and tidy. Some even believe it's primarily for deterring insects that crawl up the trunk. However, the true, vital purpose of autumn whitewashing is quite different, and neglecting it can cause significant harm to your trees. The bark's main enemy in winter isn't actually frost, but the sun. More precisely, it's the drastic temperature fluctuations it causes. Imagine a clear February or March day. The sun is already shining brightly, almost like spring, intensely warming the dark tree trunk, particularly on its south-facing side. The bark tissues and the cambium layer beneath them awaken, and sap begins to flow. Then, at night, a hard frost hits. The liquid in these awakened tissues freezes, expands into ice, and ruptures the cells. This results in deep, longitudinal cracks on the bark, known as frost cracks or sun scald. These cracks are more than just a cosmetic flaw. They are open wounds providing an easy entry point for wood decay fungi spores and other infections into the tree's trunk. The white colour of the whitewash acts as a reflector. It prevents the trunk from overheating in the sun, thus smoothing out daily temperature fluctuations. Therefore, whitewashing isn't just about aesthetics. It's a crucial protective measure that saves trees from dangerous injuries. Here's another often overlooked mistake that happens. After all the hard work in the garden seems to be finished, it's all about how you store the very harvest you put so much effort into. You've picked beautiful apples, dug up perfect potatoes, and stocked your cellar with jars of homemade preserves. You might think the job is done, but improper storage can lead to a heartbreaking situation where, by midwinter, you're sadly tossing out most of your hard-earned bounty. Every type of fruit and vegetable requires its own unique conditions. For example, apples, when stored, release ethylene gas, which speeds up the ripening and spoilage of other produce. If you store apples next to potatoes, the potatoes will quickly sprout and shrivel, and if they're kept near carrots or beets, those vegetables will develop a bitter taste. Potatoes, for their part, need complete darkness. Otherwise, their tubers will start producing the poisonous substance solanine and turn green. Pumpkins, on the other hand, thrive in a warm and dry spot, and cabbage needs cool temperatures and high humidity. Simply dumping your entire harvest into one big pile in the cellar is a surefire way to ruin it fast. That's why learning the rules of companion storage and creating the right zones for different crops is just as crucial a step as growing them in the first place. And now, for the most crucial, perhaps even paradoxical takeaway. The biggest mistake people make in October is striving for that perfectly pristine, sterile look in their garden. We rake up every last leaf, burn all the plant debris, leaving behind bare, tilled earth, thinking we've done everything just right. But in reality, we're stripping the soil of vital organic matter, killing off beneficial microorganisms and insects, and leaving the ground utterly exposed to frost and wind. Nature, simply put, abhors a vacuum and true sterility. It turns out the right approach to October garden care isn't a total clear-out, but rather a thoughtful preparation. It's about creating the perfect winter conditions, not just for your plants, but for the entire ecosystem of your garden. Your efforts in October are an investment in soil health, pest control, and ultimately in next summer's vibrant blooms and abundant harvest. Thank you for watching this video all the way to the end. I truly hope you found it helpful. If you did, please don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss out on more valuable tips for your garden and yard. Now, a question for you. Which mistake from this list have you been making most often, perhaps without even realizing it? Or perhaps you have an 11th tip of your own that you'd like to share. Let us know in the comments below. Let's learn and grow together.